Hey everybody, what's up? It's Ismail from cgalter.com. Today we're going to do a lighting review for one of the scenes submitted by one of the subscribers at CGAlter. His name is Ben, he's from Australia, and he owns a studio called The Loop Creative. You can check out his work at theloopcreative.com.au. He got some great work, make sure to check it out. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to go through his scene, and first of all we're going to start with the render, and we're going to analyze the render. I'm just going to go through what it needs to be done and upgraded pretty fast. Then I'm going to move on to his scene. We're going to check his scene and what needs to be done in the scene and the geometry and stuff. And then we're going to talk about some rendering settings. We're going to talk about the lighting and the lighting setup that's been provided by Ben. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to show you my own settings for the Doom light, for the Vray physical camera, and for the rendering as well. And after that, we're going to render and we're going to go through Photoshop. I'm going to show you a new method. It's called the tune mapping. And this method is a little bit similar to multipass compositing, but it doesn't give you that advanced control. But it's something that you can use right away, and it can get really great results by balancing the shot. And if you have overexposure in the exterior and the interior, and you want to balance the shot so that you don't have overexposed areas, you can use the tune mapping that comes with Photoshop in order to balance the shot. All right, so again, thanks for Ben for submitting the scene, and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so this is the questions that have been sent to me by Ben. So he's asking about the overall lighting and about the exterior photo. So the overall lighting, what he wants actually is to compensate the shot so that he doesn't have overexposed areas in the outside while having the inside bright. Okay, and another thing that he's asking about the exterior photo, which is the background. He want to make it as if it's on the scene, on the shot. And a quick way to do it, Ben, is to really use it as I always use this actually, unless I have the background as a mesh, as a 3D model. I render the background always separate. Since I'm having, the glass with a transparency, I can put anything there and I can have it as a layer in Photoshop and voila, right? So this is really the quickest way to do it. And this is what I use, right? So he said overall, I just need a bit of assistance with lighting. I feel that this is probably the most important part of interior scene as it affects so many things. Would you agree? Yes, I totally agree, Ben. So let's go ahead and see the render that's been sent to me by Ben. So this is the render, and right away we can notice that that there's too many light sources in the shot, Ben. So this overexposed area shouldn't be here because there's no source of light. Because I've checked the scene, so there's no window or opening from the left. So therefore, we shouldn't have this overexposed. I have no idea actually where this maybe it's the Vray light that's here. But anyways, it's clear that there is too many sources of light and that there is a Vray light, big Vray light here. That's why it's producing shadows here and here. All right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on the lighting part, and I want to show you just the result that I got. I'm going to show you the result with the post-production and everything. So what I have done here is use one source of light, and I've added a EOS light on the table so that I have a little bit of drama. And I've used actually one material. Since we're working on the lighting, I used one material, neutral material, to focus on the lighting part. I excluded just some objects so that I have some color on the shot. But there you go. We have a compensated shot, and I'm going to show you before the post-production and what it looks like. It looks like this. Sorry, like this. It looked like this, and we get this. All right. So as you can see here in this, in the output of Vray, we have overexposed area all over. But since we have a linear float, we can always compensate the shot using the tune mapping after the fact of rendering. All right. And this is where I'm going to be showing you in the final step here in the post-production. But for now, we want to just to know what's wrong with the scene. And the first thing I got to my mind was just, too many sources of light. All right, Ben? So now we're going to move on to the scene. Okay, so this is the scene. And as you can see, we have fill lights here, or Vray lights, actually directional light, just to add a little bit of light inside. So as I said, Ben, if you look carefully, we have really too many light sources. So I'm going to turn those off. So this is the first thing that I would do. I'm going to turn this as well off. The second thing I noticed is that when I clicked on the sofa, I found that this is a copy, and it's being copied not as an instance, but it's being copied as a copy. So that will add the object twice in the scene, and therefore it's going to take a lot more, double actually, the memory used in the RAM. So make sure to, next time when you copy something, copy it as an instance, clone it as an instance. All right. So since we're going to use the background separate in Photoshop as a layer, the next thing I checked is the glass, because it's really important. We want the alpha transparency to be included in the render. So one thing that I noticed here is that you didn't check effect shadows. So if you didn't check that, the light will get in, but the shadow won't be projected. And the shadow won't get through the glass. You need to check it. So in order to the shadow get through the glass, all right. For the transparency, we need to change the alpha effect channel to all channels so that we have the transparency on the alpha, as you can see in the render here. Okay. Okay, that's it actually for the materials. Maybe I have a really quick tip. Just as you can see here, we have really sharp edges. Let me just zoom in. So instead of beveling the mesh, what you can do, Ben, is that you can add. So I'm gonna leave the bump as it is, and I'm gonna add a. 1 second. I'm gonna add a comp text so that I can add 2 bumps. It's going to add. It's an add operation, so A plus B. All right, so I'm gonna pick the, where is it? Edge text. I'm gonna change it to world unit. 0.1 is enough, and it's going to round the edges in the render. Okay, it will look a little bit round, as you can see here, right? So that's actually it for the materials. That's, the rest is just, I know that you just got started on the project, so it's not, you just started. So let's move on to lighting. So the next thing, I noticed that you've used a dome light, which is really my choice as well. I like to use the HDRIs. They get neutral lighting. Well, your settings for the lighting is fine actually, so let me just check real quick. Okay, it's vertical 1:1. All right, you did this to add a little bit of contrast. Well, it's fine, yeah. Set to 1, so this is fine. Let's check the rendering. So I'm gonna go to the renderer, and I think I'm gonna check the gamma, because it's really. I know that you got the gamma set up correctly, because we talked about this a couple of times. Sorry. Preference gamma alert 2.2 fixed shadow for material. Okay, pretty good. Now let's check the color mapping. Color mapping, linear multiply. For those of you guys from the tribe, CG Alter tribe, if you don't know about gamma, well, you go to cgalter.com and you click on resources, and you have you scroll down, and at CG Alter content, you're gonna find a video that explains gamma 2.2 setup in detail. Why you shouldn't, why you should use it, and why it's important, how to use it, how to set it up, all the information that you need. I think that's it. Well, for the frame buffer, he's using the raw image file to export EXR. That's pretty good. No render elements. That's fine. We're not going to be using render element in this session, because I want to show you other, it's being, multipass compositing has been covered heavily at the site. So if you want to learn about it, you have 3 videos that go to, you have even a case study. I highly recommend that you read the case study and then the videos. And there's also a linear workflow article, pretty good. Anyways, it's been covered heavily, so I'm going to show you another trick that you can use to do tune mapping. All right. So I set this usually to 16 or 8. I mean, just the bucket smaller in order to have faster feedback. Dynamic memory, I use it. I make it 0 so that Vray and 3ds Max can use the whole RAM. It's not limited. Okay. Now, some people say that it's not good, but anyways, it never did any problem to my machine or anything. I always set it to 0. Anyways, it's your choice. Another thing that is really important is low thread priority. I always set it on because if you launch the render and you want to browse or do some, Photoshop work or something while you're doing the render, if you don't tick this, 3ds Max will be using all the resources of the computer, and therefore you're not going to be able to work in parallel with the rendering working. So I think that's it. Well, global illumination, okay, pretty good. All right, I think we're done. Let me check just my notes. So we talked about the glass shadows has to be. I just want to review this so that you don't forget it. So we have this has to be ticked, effect shadow, and all channels for all the glass. Okay. Use instance instead of copy, because now you could have saved a lot of memory just by copying as an instance. Use the Vray edge text to round the edges. If you have sharp edges, use it actually everywhere. I use it everywhere. Any shader has this map added. So the round edges, the glass, and then I'm actually going through my notes. All right, I think we're ready to go to okay, priority. Okay, so the other thing that I want you to focus on is just to check this to 0 or a higher number than 4000, and check the low thread priority. Okay, that's it. All right, so I'm gonna go to the updated scene where I'm gonna be showing you my settings for the dome light, my settings for the camera, and the settings for the rendering. Okay, because I use Brute Force instead of a reduced map that Benz is using here. And I'm also going to talk about the settings shared by Vlado recently, and I started using the same settings, and it turns out to be working pretty well. So I'm gonna go through this in detail. So let's jump to the updated scene. Okay, so here's the scene, the updated scene. You're gonna be surprised. You're gonna be really surprised. Everything is by default. I don't change anything because the simplest you go about this, the neutral your scene will be. And let me show you my settings here. I'm gonna pick the HDRI. Now here's my settings for the HDRI. I think that I have the same settings as you, Ben. So 1 for the multiplier, and I checked invisible so that the background, so that it doesn't show in the background. The simplings by default, I just loaded an HDRI loader, and I picked an HDRI. I used an HDRI from peterguthrie.com. peterguthrie.net? I don't know. peterguthrie.com, I guess. I hope that I pronounced the name correctly. Sorry, Peter. So yeah, the simpling by default, HDRI, resolution 6000. Okay, it's not by default, so change it to 6000 or higher. I put it as the size of the HDRI itself. So this is my rule for that. Let me show you the HDRI itself, the map. Sorry, I have to select it again. Whoa, good. All right, so the settings are very default actually. So overall multiplier set to 1, render multiplier set to 1, default values. I use this as an inverse, the inverse gamma. I set it to 0.75 just to get a little bit of contrast, but I can get away with it with 1. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter really. I changed the horizon rotation to this number so that I get the lighting from the right to the left, just to match a little bit the background, because Ben has provided a background as well. So I just tried to match the lighting on that background. All right, so that's it actually for the dome light. Now let's move on to the camera. You're gonna be surprised, guys. Everything is by default. F number 8 default. I unticked vignetting. I don't like the effect that the vignetting adds. It adds actually just black corners, and I can add it in Photoshop pretty easily, like with 2 clicks. The white balance set to neutral. Since I use an HDRI, I always use this, where the white balance is neutral. And the color balance, it gives you white color balance, neutral, right? And sorry, if you're interested about the color balance and what it, the white balance and what it means, well, the white balance is about making what's black looks black and what's white looks white. And any lighting situation, what's black has to look black and what's white has to look white. Any lighting situation. So, anyways, I just wanted to have a good idea about it. Shutter speed 200, but I can set it to 400. Actually, rendering dark scenes so that it render faster. Vray find it really hard to calculate highlights. So if you give it less highlights on the render, it will render a little bit faster. Film speed 100 default. Okay. So again, it's really default settings. It doesn't matter. Really, it doesn't matter. Out of the box, it can work. Really, I promise. So that's it actually for the settings that I have done here. So we covered the dome light and the V-Ray camera. Now I'm gonna move on to the renderer. Now the renderer, I used some settings for the rendering, especially for the adaptive image sampler. At the beginning I thought it's not going to work when I watched the video, but when I tried it, it really worked like magic. It's really great settings. Now I've got these settings from Vlado. He's one of the makers of V-Ray. He's the father of V-Ray, they call him. So Vlado, if you hear this, thank you so much for the settings. It saves me so much time. So thank you so much. I use the settings covered in this video. So if you want, I'm gonna have the link below this video. So you're gonna have the direct link to it. If not, just type in YouTube V-Ray sampling tutorial Vlado, and you're gonna get the video. Watch it. It's amazing. It's great. So I use the same settings here, and yeah, that's it. Another thing that I use is bright force with light cache. Because when I use I don't use like Iridescence map because it's so GI is so weak and it doesn't show the bumps nicely because it shows really actually the light cache with the Iridescence map is not good anymore. It just start using bright force even if it takes a little bit of extra time, but it's going to give you nice results. Bright force, light cache. Yeah. So yeah, that's for the GI. So just as a reminder, low thread priority, dynamic memory to 0, 16 as a bucket. It's your choice. So I added a little bit of passes here so that I can make use of them if I want to. I added the Z depth pass as well. So yeah, that's actually my settings bin. Of course, I'm gonna send you the scene, the updated scene, so don't worry about that. Yeah, so we've checked the gamma before. So yeah, that's my scene actually. Render at 2000, and I got not this, but this. So that was the result. That was actually the result. Yeah, well, it's overexposed all over, but we're gonna fix that. So now we're gonna move on to Photoshop and we're gonna do post-processing. We're gonna do tune mapping. All right, to compensate the shot because this is our goal here. All right, let's do it. All right, so here we go in Photoshop to try to do the compensation of this shot. But this is the result that we're gonna be aiming for. So before we do that, I forgot to mention two things here, is the use of the EOS light in the V-Ray Sun and Sky system. So I'm going to do this pretty quickly. So I use a V-Ray EOS light just to add a little bit of drama on the scene and to have a contrast for the lighting. It adds to really, like kind of sculpting the scene with light, if you like. Having a contrast will make it more enjoyable to look at. You can add US light here in the kitchen, for example, and those spotlights. All right, that's for the US light. Now for the Vray sun and sky, just create Vray sun and turn it on. Now here, to make the shadows a little bit soft, you can use the sun multiplier and bump it up to higher value than 1, because by default it's 1. So value of 5 or 10 will make it really soft for you. You can go higher if you like. The shadow subdivision, I turn it to 12, 15. Sometimes I turn it to 15, but 12 is really the one that I go for. By default it's 3. All right. So that's for the Vray sun and sky. Now, another thing that is really important, that's in the inside, you're not going to get a lot of illumination using just the sun and sky alone. So what you should do is you create Vray lights on those windows for each window, and you select the light and you tick Skylight, Portal, and Simple. Now, if you want really fast results, it's not really good, but if you want fast results, if you have an animation, I use this actually with animation, the Vray sun and sky system, because it renders faster than an HDRI. So let's be honest. So if you want faster results, click on the store with Irradiance map, but you know, GI is not going to be really great, so I wouldn't do it. All right, so I'm gonna untick this because I don't like to use it. All right, so let's go back to Photoshop. So we're gonna aim for, you know, to create something like this. Now you can add contrast if you like. So here's the result that we get, and have the background. Okay, so I just placed the background below it. I have the transparency here since we've used that on the shader. Affect the shadows and use for all channels, so that we have, you know, the alpha transparency on the glass as well. Now, let's move on. Let's go to the filter, and we're going to use the camera roll filter in order to compensate the shot, because, you know, let's face it, it's really terrible. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is to use the white balance. I'm going to click on this gray, and the shot is balanced. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to really be careful here. And by the way, those blacks are normal because of, I don't know, Photoshop displays it like this at 50%. So anyways, I'm gonna go back to fit in the view. What we want is to compensate the shot inside, outside. All right, so we don't have overexposed areas all over. So I'm gonna start with the highlights. I'm gonna turn them on a little bit down, sorry, and also the exposure. All right, pretty good. Now I'm gonna work with the shadows now. Okay, so an image has shadow, has midtones, and has highlights. So now we turn the highlight a little bit down, but we want to turn the shadows a little bit up so that we get a little bit of illumination. All right, there you go. We started getting some result here. Now we're gonna contrast this a little bit because it looks really flat, and you know, it's a matter of spending time just refining here and there, right? So as you can see now, with just a few clicks, we've compensated the shot. It turns out to be pretty well. All right. So shadows maybe a little bit more, less highlights. All right, that looks pretty good for me. I'm gonna hit OK, and there you go. Now with the background, well, the background doesn't match actually, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to place hue and saturation. I'm going to desaturate it a little bit. Alright, and I'm going to illuminate it a little bit. Oh, 1 second, not using that, but using an exposure, it's better. Alright, pretty good. So it depends on the taste actually at this point, you know, what you like the image to look like. But anyways, you got the idea. Alright, so at this point we have compensated the shot. So at this point you can start working on your color correction if you want to work on your color correction, and you can use plugins for that. I use Magic Bullet sometimes, not quite often, because, you know, I don't like to do a lot of color correction to my images. I like them to look photoreal and something that looks photographic, or something that will, you know, I like to do shots that looks like what my eye would see in the real world. That's what I want to. That's really the style that I like. But yeah, if you want to add color correction, feel free to do it. I just want to show you a quick feature here, and it's called color lookup, and it comes with lookup table. It's a LUT tables, 3D LUTs. And 3D LUTs basically is they try to mimic films, and you can save, for example, if you're doing color correction in a grading tool, you can save the preset with color correction and you can reapply it here in Photoshop. But most of the time they use LUTs to convert into film look, right? So I'm gonna try to play a little bit with these. All right, I think this is fine. So another trick I can show you is you can work with color or luminosity. See, an image has luminosity, luminance, and color. So you can target, instead of adding this effect to the color, you can add it only to the luminance, and we can do that, you see, or we can do it on color. So as you wish, you know. Maybe that's too much for me. Anyways, for my taste, that's too much. I like to. All right, so we've compensated the shot, and you can go from here and you can start adjusting and adding color correction and stuff. So as I said, it's your choice. All right, so I think that you got it, man. You've compensated the shot and using the tune mapping. So remember that we're using just the camera roll. Go here and play with the highlight, the shadows, the whites, the blacks. Now clarity, be careful with that, because when you do this with the transparency, it's going to create some really weird stuff in the edges. So yeah, play with those, and the more time you spend on an image, the great. So you can also use the multipass compositing as well, and use, for example, here we worked on the whole image, but we can work only on the lighting pass, or we can use we can work on the reflection pass and turn the highlights a little bit down of that reflection pass, so we work with more advanced stuff. But anyways, I wanted to show you this technique because it's right away you can find yourself good results. So yeah, another thing I can do here is I can, for example, to make more reflection on the floor, I can use the reflection pass and copy it here and add a little bit of reflection. Just be creative, play with the passes, and yeah. So before we finish off, I just want to show you my notes here, just as a reminder of things that we covered together. So yeah, we started with the material. So tip number 1 was the round corners. So instead of having sharp corners, you can get round corners. How? Using the Vray edge text map that comes with Vray. Tip 2 is for the glass shadow. So in order for the shadow to get in with the light, what you do is you go to the refractions area and you click on effect shadows. In the refraction area still, we click on all channels on the effect channels. So that's for the materials. For the lighting, tip 1, use one source of light. Tip 2, camera settings, default, white balance, neutral, camera vignetting off. I don't like the vignetting that comes with the camera. It's just ridiculous. Tip 3, always add ground outside. Because if you don't have a ground, the HDRI is going to be reflected inside, and most of the HDRIs have it's black from the bottom, so it's going to be reflected in the scene. So why not adding a ground so that it reflects the gray shader, neutral, or grass, or whatever you have. So tip 4, use EOS light to add drama and story and to build EOS light is really great because it adds contrast and it adds a story, and it really make a path for when the viewer is going to see the image, it helps him see the image clearly and to focus on things that you want him to focus on, right? So this is one of the function of the EOS light. For the rendering, dynamic memory limit set to higher value than 4000, as we said. I use the value of 0. That way it uses all the RAM. Tip number 2, take low thread priority so that you can browse, you can listen to music, you can Photoshop a little bit, so that it doesn't kill your machine. Recommendation, Vlado settings. So you're gonna find the link below this video or in the post or whatever you're reading this video. Tip number 3, light cache brute force. Forget about irradiance map. Use light cache in brute force, please. It makes really nice renders. Your objects are going to stick to the floor. They're not gonna look like they're floating. Your global illumination is going to look nicer. So sources for HDRI, you have Python3, you have VisPeople, and CG Sky. My favorite is VisPeople because they're huge. I mean, you can have, I don't know, 24,000 or something by 24,000. It's huge, man. Anyways, it's really good HDRIs. You can use them and get really great results. I used them with one of my renders actually. So meet the artist. Meet the artist Ben. As I said earlier, he's a 3D visualizer from Austria, founder of the Loop Creative. Please, I have spelled the website incorrectly earlier, so it's theloopcreative.com.au. Okay, so check out his work. He got some really great work. And the website looks pretty nice. So if you have a project sometime soon, please contact Ben. He's awesome. All right, so I hope that you liked this review. If you like it and you want more, please let me know. If you have any questions, please let me know. So yeah, cgalter.com for more. Talk to you soon.